welcome back to International Star Media, the Gold Star Standard, at the Gold Star Standard. Reactions, reviews, and news you can use. Once again, I am your host, here to stay and not to play. International Yada, for the records and the dollars, and check it out. Time and time again. Here we go with a guilty plea in sex trafficking of a minor. So y'all still think it's a joke. So we're going to keep bringing it to you so you can know it's not a joke. You get caught up in one of these sex trafficking cases dealing with minors, and hey, you get what you asked for. Here we go. Arizona sex trafficker sentenced to 10 years in prison. Here we go. Lewis Broadway Phillips, aka Lou Rock. Dealing with minors is a major problem. Find something legal to do. It's not the way you want to go right here. Dealing with minors is a major problem. Here we go. Man pleads guilty to sex trafficking and witness tampering of 2 women, 1 minor. A man who pleaded guilty to sex trafficking, 2 women, and a girl was sentenced to 10 years in prison, lifetime probation, and sex offender registry in January, according to a statement released Friday. Not only was he sentenced to 10 years in prison, Lou Rock, he was also sentenced to lifetime probation and sex offenders registry upon release. Don't end up on a sex offenders registry for a lifetime, and also lifetime probation after serving at least 10 years in prison. Take heed. Learn from the mistakes of others. Don't do it. Leave those minors alone. Leave those children alone. Minors cannot consent. Okay, here we go. Let's move on. The Arizona Attorney General's office alleged that Lewis Broadway Phillips, 27, advertised on the internet from 2017 to 2018, took the women and a girl to hotel rooms and forced them to perform prostitution acts in exchange for money. Force, fraud, coercion, violence, and/or the threats of violence. Found guilty of those elements when dealing with sex trafficking, and you too can end up with 10 years. Force, took the women and a girl to a hotel room and forced, fraud, or coercion, them to perform prostitution acts in exchange for money. Pay attention. Here we go. While released and pending trial, Broadway Phillips contacted the women to threaten and try to convince them not to testify. He also used social media and his friends to harass and intimidate the women, according to the Attorney General, Mark Brunovich. Here we go. In October 2019, Broadway Phillips was charged in a new case for influence and tampering with witnesses after the state said all 3 victims reported Broadway Phillips for contacting them. So they said after he was released on bail, he contacted the quote-unquote victims and the victims reported back on him. Hey, this man's harassing us, they said. Broadway Phillips for contacting them, wanting them to relinquish the girls and recant their original statements. Wanting them to relinquish their rights and recant their original statements, according to the Attorney General. The statement also said that Broadway Phillips tried to bribe one of the victims with money, food, clothes, and a ride to court. He tried to bribe her with a ride to court.
What?
That's interesting. Money, clothes, food, and a ride to court. Okay, here we go. Broadway Phillips had already been indicted in April 2019 for illegally conducting an enterprise, money laundering, child sex trafficking, pandering, and receiving earnings of a prostitute, and was held on cash bond of $25,000. He had already been indicted for child sex trafficking. Y'all think this is a game, this child sex trafficking thing, dealing with these minors. This really is a major problem that needs to stop. Leave those kids alone. When y'all gonna learn, man? Here we go. He was released from jail in May 2019. He was then indicted by the state in October 2019 for 1 count of influencing a witness, 2 counts of witness tampering, and was held without bond. Oh, so that's how he broke his bond agreements with the witness, influence a witness and witness tampering. He was released in May, and they locked him back up in October after the girls reported on him. What you expect a minor to do? Anyways, Broadway Phillips pleaded guilty to illegal control of an enterprise, attempt to commit sex trafficking of a minor, sex trafficking, tampering with, and influencing a witness. Lou Rock pled guilty of this. Said, hey, it's not worth taking this one to trial. Might as well plead out. That's why it's not worth it. Leave it alone. Leave those children alone. Leave the minors alone. As you can see here from the picture, this is Lou Rock right here in the middle. There were adults, consensual sex workers that he had that didn't have a problem with it. So why deal with the minor? Dealing with minors is a major problem, especially when it's coming to this sex trafficking. And remember, to find you guilty of sex trafficking and dealing with a minor, they don't need to find you guilty of those 4 elements: force, fraud, coercion, violence, and or the threats of violence. The simple fact that you had a minor is enough. And as it should be. Here we go. Leave those kids alone. A Superior Court judge sentenced Broadway Phillips to 10 years in prison, followed by lifetime probation and sex offender terms on January 7th. Justice demands that we hold traffickers accountable for their actions, Branovich said in a statement. Perpetrators use coercion, there's that word again, force, fraud, coercion, and fear to re-victimize their vulnerable trafficking victims over and over. Homeland Security and Mesa Police Department investigated the case, according to the Arizona Attorney General's office. And let's check out this news story on this before we end this one. Okay, here we go. Let's go.
I am Detective Natalie Knorr. I am a former detective with the Human Exploitation Trafficking Unit within the Mesa Police Department, known as HEAT. Several years ago, we were called by patrol officers who responded to a hotel where a missing juvenile had been located. They had suspicions when they had contacted that juvenile that she was prostituting, being forced into it, so they had notified.
So the juvenile or the minor that was that this guy had, Lou Rock, the minor that he had, they found her in a hotel. Well, y'all ain't gonna learn, huh? Let's take this one from the top. I'm gonna let it play through. I got it's a lot to say about this one, but we're gonna let it play for the context. Here we go.
I am a former detective with the Human Exploitation Trafficking Unit within the Mesa Police Department, known as HEAT. Several years ago, we were called by patrol officers who responded to a hotel where a missing juvenile had been located. They had suspicions when they had contacted that juvenile that she was prostituting, being forced into it, so they had notified the HEAT unit. We responded, we had spoken with that juvenile at the time, and she disclosed that she was being trafficked, identified how she had gotten into it, how she had met the trafficker, and gave us a little bit more information. We started doing research. She had a phone with her. A couple of those texting apps were on her phone. And from there, we obtained those phone numbers. We were able to identify several ads that were posted on some of those websites that were known for prostitution, also known to promote trafficking. And at that time, we then linked her phone number and her ads to several other unidentified females. And so we kind of established a time frame of how long this might have been going on. And then looking a little bit further into those, we found some familiar wording. Emojis at the time were very big, and kind of establishing then trying to identify who the other females were. The whole investigation was approximately about a year by the time we established enough probable cause. We had interviewed, we ended up with a total of about 4 juveniles, 4 adult females, and all who had stated that they were recruited through the clothing line, through the modeling, through those warehouse parties and the parties on the college, and then 4 others that we had identified that we couldn't prove, we didn't have information that they were being trafficked. However, we had enough to believe that they had been.
Well, I can't force nothing. I can't force you to go be your own woman and go do great things. I can't force it. If you want to go off and get money a certain way, well, by all means.
I never to do that. When I met you, you told me you do music videos, you had the PLU thing going on, and it turned into something else. I never, ever wanted to do that, and you knew that.
We located where he was at.
These were the actual phone calls that they had recorded of him talking to a few of the girls. I'll rewind that a little bit. Here we go. Where are we at with it? Right here. Here we go.
Force you to go be your own woman and go do great things. I can't force it. If you want to go off and get money a certain way, well, by all means.
I never to do that. When I met you, you told me you do music videos, you had the PLU thing going on, and it turned into.
She said, when I met you, I thought you was doing music videos. You had the music thing going on. You had the clothing line going on and a few other things. So this is how they find you guilty of fraud, and also how they use the coercion. Coerced her into doing it, talked her into doing it, and used fraud by the things that he had going on. Y'all pay attention out here. This is serious business. The sex trafficking / human trafficking is serious business. This is not pimping and pandering. It's not the Mann Act. We talking about sex trafficking. And when you're dealing with a minor, especially when it's federal, that's a life sentence. Y'all better pay attention. Everything is not for everybody. Find something legal to do. Here we go.
Money a certain way, well, by all means.
I
But
never do that. When I met you, you told me you do music videos, you had the PLU thing going on, and it turned into something else. I never, ever wanted to do that, and you knew that.
We located where he was at. We had arrested him. We had notified we tried to keep in contact with those victims that we had established, that we had spoken with and everything, and keep them updated with what was going on. The hard part with the victims is that they like to disassociate themselves from the situation and that, so they would move out of state. A lot of times they might not return our phone calls, but then it was also building that trust up. They were very fearful of him. They weren't sure what he would be capable of. And so we had to build up that trust within, that they could believe us and what we would say, and we could help them out. He acknowledged that he was trying to make some money, that he had his clothing line. Some of the girls he claimed that did it on their own. However, we had all those messages that he would actually provide, like how much to pay for a certain time, things that they would do. We had several of the victims disclose.
She just noted that some of the girls did it on their own. They saying because he participated in that too. I guess they mean posting ads. Y'all better pay attention out here before you caught up in the in his system and get caught up in a case like Lou Rock, where he had adult consensual sex workers. Hey, they didn't have a problem with it. Adult consensual sex workers with it. And chose to incorporate minors into that. That's where you go wrong. That's where it all come down. Crash and burn. Dealing with minors is a major problem. That's a serious crime. Dealing with these minors out here is a serious crime. You don't want to get caught up in that. Take heed. Don't do it. Here we go.
Disclosed to us that he had actually taught them little tricks of the trade, in a sense, of what they could do to try to get more money and try to earn shorter time frame with those persons that were looking for a prostitute. Some of the girls had been beaten up by him if they didn't want to go through a deal, or if they didn't want to work for him anymore. One of his first girls that we had identified later on in the investigation.
Hey, and I don't care what you heard or know what you heard. Keep going upside that girl head if you want to. Think it's a game. Force, fraud, coercion, violence, and or the threats of violence. That's enough to get you a lot of time in the penitentiary. If you out here doing what you're doing, you better know exactly what it is that you're doing. Let's go.
Actually almost had her back broken by him during one time when she tried to get away from him. The last time that when she was with him, they ended up moving out of state. He wanted her to work out there. She didn't want to. She was being very adamant not to. He had been out doing something. She stated to us that she realized he came back home, his ankle was hurt, and she just took that as her opportunity to run. And she ran, she found somebody, flagged them down. They got her out of that area and then got her with the police officers. And then shortly after that, we had realized that he had recruited somebody else out in that state also. Majority, there will be some type of physical force. It might not be every single girl that the trafficker has recruited. A lot of times they try to make an example of their main girl that they know will bring money in for them, that they know the other girls might trust. And other times they just try to pose more of the boyfriend. This person had tried to pose as a boyfriend initially, and then once he knew that he had them under his control, then he would go ahead and start using that force. We were going to go to trial on the case. There were approximately about 11 counts total between an illegal enterprise running an illegal business, child sex trafficking, and then from there, he would be looking at, if we did the trial, at least 32 years minimum for a prison sentence. And instead, he took a plea offer, which the victims
said he was looking at minimum at least 32 years if he was found guilty in trial. If he took it to trial and was found guilty, he was looking at a minimum 32 years. You don't even want to put yourself in a situation like that. Take heed. Learn from the mistakes of others. And don't do it. Leave those children alone. You do not want to be sitting in the courtroom fighting for 32 years. He took a plea. He said, I did it. I take the 10 years. I did it. I dealt with those minors. I did it. I will take the plea for 10 years. I will take the lifetime probation, and I will take being a lifetime registered sex offender. He didn't want to receive that 32 years in prison. Don't even put yourself into a situation like that. All she got to do is point the finger. You dealing with a minor, she going to turn around, point the finger at you. He did it. And if you did it, hey, you get what you deserve. Dealing with these minors is a major problem. Let's continue.
Had agreed upon. We always keep them in the loop with the court process, and it was a 10-year sentence. He was held within the courts while the case was going through the court system, and then at that point, he was still speaking with a few people that he knew. He ended up persuading this one female that he was friends with, that at the time it appeared he was trying to recruit her into his little crew and being trafficked. And she ended up posting his bond, which was about a $25,000 bond. He got out on bond, started then contacting the victims of the case and persuading them to drop the charges.
Listen, if you take yourself off a victim in my case and recant your statement, say that none of that happened, and say you lied, will you do that?
Yes.
Okay, then you'll be left alone. I'll have you and somebody take you out to lunch, dinner, and buy you a outfit, and give you a ride if you need it, like twice, and then after that, you'll be left.
So they got him, they got the man recorded saying that if she took back her statement, he'd get somebody to take her out to dinner, buy her an outfit, and get her rides to court. He said this over the jail phone. Excuse me for laughing at that, but hey. Really, use your head for something more than a hat rack. Leave those minors alone. Once again, minors cannot consent. They cannot. So if you having some type of relations with a minor or sending her somewhere, hey, that's a crime. And if they find you guilty of that crime federally, they'll send you to prison for life. He was lucky to receive 10 years. Don't throw your life away doing something stupid that you know nothing about. Here we go.
The victims of the case and persuading them to drop the charges.
Listen, if you take yourself off a victim in my case and recant your statement, say that none of that happened, and say you lied, will you do that?
Yes.
Okay, then you'll be left alone. I'll have you and somebody take you out to lunch, dinner, and buy you a outfit, and give you a ride if you need it, like twice, and then after that, you'll be left alone forever.
He had offered them dinner, some clothes, and then a ride. He stated that he would personally take them down to the courts and then have them tell the courts that they didn't want to be a victim, they didn't want to file the charges anymore. Thankfully, one of the victims, we're talking about building that trust, had reached out to us. It was probably about 11, maybe almost midnight one night, had called myself, called a fellow detective, and told us what was going on, said that they had the phone call, and then she did a phenomenal job of getting that conversation recorded with him. And so we had all that proof for...
Oh, so the jail phones didn't even... This is not even evidence that they used from a jail phone. This is evidence that they used from the victim slash the victim of the crime. He called her. She recorded the phone call. Find something legal to do. Everything is not for everybody. Leave those children alone. Or not. And end up in prison for 15 years, 10 years, 20 years or better. Those are the options. Those are the or nots. Here we go.
Had called myself, called a fellow detective, and told us what was going on, said that they had the phone call, and then she did a phenomenal job of getting that conversation recorded with him. And so we had all that proof for the attorneys. So he got picked up again on those additional charges of witness tampering. For those that, being younger, some even as an adult age, starting with the social media and things like that, the disadvantage with social media nowadays is that everybody wants those numbers. They want those friends. They want all those higher, numbered of people who like them, people who see them, and links on their accounts and that. The difficult part is majority of those people do not know who everybody is. So one of the main things as we go around and speak and talk with parents, kids, college age students and things like that, is to know all your friends on the social media. There are those who will pose maybe as a 16, 17-year-old boy or girl. There's a lot of times the boys are trafficked also. And it's once they realize, those people that are looking, those traffickers, those that are trying to exploit any of the juveniles or even anybody for money, feeling that they could get money, make money off of that person, they're going to look for when they're down. Are they missing certain things in their life? Are they having a bad day? Is there some turmoil going on? And most people will post just almost everything about their life. And once they see that, they'll start reaching out, start friending them, start being nice to them. Oh, I can help you out with this. Oh, I've got a place to stay. Or, hey, are you interested? Sometimes if it's a modeling type of thing, are you interested in coming to this party? Will you try, modeling for me in a sense? And then once they kind of built that trust with them and establish more of a friendship, sometimes they may even try posing like a boyfriend type of thing also. They'll start meeting up, and then they realize that they have that person connected. Most of the traffickers that I've interviewed, that I've arrested over the years working there, have said once they knew that person has done some type of a sexual act, a prostitution deal, they knew that they had them hooked. And then speaking with all of those victims, they'd said after their first deal, they just felt so sick to their stomach after it, and then they felt like it was all on them. They had nothing else to do or no other choice to make. I would say with parents, or even whether if it's a juvenile, even if you have a kid that's off to college or something like that, is to maintain that contact with them and then maintain some type of contact with their social media. A lot of times parents are not aware of how many types of apps kids might have on their phone, either some having, especially if they're under the age of 18, having some type of parental control on that, but then also monitoring, see what they're posting online, see what kind of people are liking it and things like that. Are they going to some of these private groups? Are they having some private chats and things like that? Just to be more aware and have that open conversation. This happens anywhere. It happens in Mesa, it happens in Phoenix, it happens everywhere that you can think of. And it can be anyone, any young boy, young girl, adult boy, those that might be 18, they lose a job, they're out on the street or something like that. That's a very easy way to get recruited into trafficking.
And there you have it. Leave those kids alone. International Star Media, the Gold Star Standard. At the Gold Star Standard. Reactions, reviews, and news you can use. Once again, I am your host, International Yada, for the records and the dollars. And check it out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share the videos. And we will see you on the next one.